Hi, I'm David Wolff. I grew up in Fort Mitchell, Kentucky, but I lived my entire adult life in Newport, Kentucky, so for about the last 30 years. I identify he, him as a gay man. About 94, yep, I moved to Newport after college. Western Kentucky University, so a little different, a little farther away. The rest of the family went to the University of Kentucky, so I was already the black sheep of the family.
What did you study?
Public relations and English. Yeah, I was kind of a late bloomer. I didn't come out early. I actually didn't come out till I was about 26. So after college, never really acted on it or anything. Didn't tell my parents really I was gay, even though I obviously knew it from a very early age. But I figured it was going to be a confrontation. It was going to be something when I met someone. So I was going to have to tell them that. So why should I tell them this and then have to tell them that? So since I really wasn't acting on it, I thought, why should I tell them until there's a reason to? There's somebody there that I need to tell them about. Yeah, I was very involved in college. It's a little smaller than like the University of Kentucky. So I was very active in groups. I was in a fraternity. There's a group called the Spirit Masters, which is a student ambassador group. So I went and I gave campus tours and things like that. So I was very involved in it. Just kind of stayed busy, I guess. I did. The fall after I graduated from college, I got a job at Delta Airlines. That's when Delta was a hub here. So it was huge and they were hiring. It was very difficult to get on then. But I got on. I worked there for 10 years. And I guess it was during that period that I came out. I kind of, I guess, maybe started to meet some people at the airline. I hate to stereotype. But before that, my upbringing had been very upper middle class, I guess, where I didn't really know people. My parents didn't know gay people. I always kind of joke the only gay person my mom knew was Billy Crystal's character on Soap, and we weren't allowed to watch that show. So, it was kind of, I guess, a sheltered upbringing. So now that I was out working and stuff, I guess I was starting to feel a little more comfortable. I did. So actually, I traveled quite a bit when I worked for Delta. The documentary you're making about Pride, there were several years in the 90s where we didn't have a big festival parade here in Cincinnati. And I actually used to fly to Canada. I used to go to Montreal and Toronto and go to their prides. I have photograph albums of pictures from their prides. It was just something totally different than here. And I think there's that whole kind of, you're not from here. So even though I felt comfortable, you're more comfortable kind of when you're not where you're from. Surprisingly, it really wasn't that accepting. I really wasn't out, but there was other people I knew there. And actually, one of the guys I didn't know until I went to a bar one night. And then I worked at the gates, and then the very next day, you have a gate agent, you have an assist agent, and he was the gate agent, I was the assist. And I'd never worked with him before and never seen him before until the night before at a bar. So, and so I kind of got a circle of friends there that still to this day, I would say not a majority, a sizable portion. I have a group of pretty much all gay men that we go out every Thursday night. We have been for 15, 20 years, and a large circle of that is people that worked at Delta. So I graduated from college 87. I started with Delta in 87 and worked there until 97. So it was still a couple years, even after college, where I really felt comfortable. I mean, I started kind of going out, but really not because I was still living at home right away. And so it would have been kind of that 90s, early 90s, the start of the 90s, which is when the whole Article 12, Issue 3 kind of thing. I love Cincinnati. I've always lived in this area. I'm a huge cheerleader of Cincinnati, but that was a time you were like embarrassed to be from Cincinnati. There was all entertainers boycotting the city and stuff like that, and you kind of only heard of it in a negative way. And so I guess I didn't really have I wasn't really that involved then with things. So I kind of saw that across the river, but then that's right when I was starting. I had talked a little earlier to you about letters I wrote to politicians and city council and stuff about the repeal of the issues and things like that. So that was kind of my start there with kind of getting involved in the community, I guess. Yeah, in a lot of ways it doesn't reflect. It's so funny that people talk about conservative Cincinnati, and you're just like, oh my gosh, if you lived here, you would know. It's not. And I have friends around the country. I worked for Delta, different things. And, we have people that come here from New York and they, can't believe how progressive it is and just stuff like that. And years ago, there was a restaurant called Carol's, and very popular with the LGBTQ group. And just it was a place you could hang out. That was kind of your safe space at that point. There's bars too, but not the bar scene. This was kind of where you could go and be yourself and hang out. And it was casual, so it wasn't expensive. So you could go there every week, much like Hamburger Mary's years later. It was kind of a place where, not that you were harassed all the time, but you were kind of always guarded, and you could kind of go to those places and let your guard down and kind of be yourself there. So I'm not really a bar person because I don't drink. But again, that's kind of the place you could go. Like, there wasn't the gay friendly places, the gay, this kind of stuff. It was the bars. So when I worked for the Delta Airlines, obviously I worked weird hours. So I used to get off Monday nights at 10 o'clock, and I didn't have to work Tuesday and Wednesday, so I used to go to the dock. The dock had, dancers and music and everything late on Monday night, and it was kind of a, I guess, industry night kind of thing. So I used to love to go there. My husband and I met 25 years ago at what was then Shooters, where Birdcage is now. Those are kind of the places I guess you would go. There was the Pipeline, which, even before I came out, like, I knew about it because I'd read about it, or, you read something in the paper about it, like, something. And I remember driving down there before just to see it and just to see where a gay bar was, and, just to see gay people going in, and not to like out them or see who they were, but just because I'm like, oh, those are gay people, The bars were kind of your community center. Like now you do have all these organizations, I feel like, but before, you met at the bars. If there was some kind of tragedy, the bars raised the money. In the early days of AIDS, they were the ones that had the fundraiser and got the information, did the safe sex packets, stuff like that. They're the ones when something even political was coming up, they would be the ones that would organize, rallies, things like that. So it was your community center. And there was kind of a center, Cincinnati, I would say at that time, you kind of had around the Court Street area in Cincinnati, I would say was kind of a gay area. And then kind of around the university, and then North Side. Those are kind of the three, as I remember, kind of gay areas. I love history, so I'm actually a tour guide. That's what my job is. I give tours of Cincinnati. But I love history, and I love gay history, so I'm involved with OutReels Cincinnati, the gay film festival here. It's been going on for 12 years now. I've been involved all 12 years. I've been the director for about the last 6 years or so. But I always love getting documentaries because I love the history of it, kind of the community, the stories of the old neighborhoods, kind of like now people, and it is good in a way, like we're more accepted, we can be anywhere, but everything is becoming more homogenized where you don't have these gay areas that I find fascinating. I just think the whole evolution of those, and I'm very interested in that. So I do read a lot, and I do watch a lot of movies. I think the bars do kind of have their own clientele in a way, and sad to say, but like when I went out, I really didn't see women. It was like a gay bar, a men's gay bar. And, I know women had bars as well. That early there weren't men there, but they really didn't at that point socialize in the bar setting. I feel like on campaigns, on rallies, on issues, we worked together, but then we didn't really, well, I'll say that for myself, didn't really socialize. Others, I'm sure, did. And so the bars, it was a place you met people. As far as black and white, I don't think they were as much. I mean, I feel like kind of everyone was there. And of course, this is different eras. I mean, if you talk to people 10 years before me, it might have been vastly different. But I kind of knew people from all over and all over the city and stuff. And that's where you'd see them. And so, you didn't see them until a month later or 2 weeks later or whatever when you went. That was kind of your reconnecting with people or whatever. I think there is a divide. And like you say, younger queer people, and a lot of that too is because I think it's more accepting in a lot of ways. So a lot of those people, queer is the word you use. So they're a lot more on the spectrum, different places, so it's, I think they do. But then you go to a gay bar and you're like, no, look, there's all these women here. But they're all the women that are there at a bachelor party or actually with their boyfriends dancing, because it is now more accepted. And so that's another thing, like we talked about the homogenization and kind of the neighborhoods that were gay and now they're not because we can go everywhere. It's kind of the same thing with the bars, now they feel comfortable going there. So it's really not, it's kind of lost some of that purpose it once served. It is more just kind of a place to go and have fun and have a drink, where I think it served a lot bigger purpose years ago. That's what I was saying. The change, I think, is good and bad, because yes, we can do that because we are more accepted and people feel free to go there and we feel free to go other places and they feel free to come into our spaces, if I can say that. But also, again, it's kind of losing identity. It's kind of losing part of who we are. And again, I don't think we're as attacked, although when this is being filmed in 2023, who knows? In many ways, we're going backwards. So, but I don't feel it's as much that safe space. Although I do feel people are coming out younger and younger, and I think they're looking for some place. So for them, it is that space to come and dance and be free and be who they are. Yes and no. My parents had a hard time at the beginning, very much so. As did some other members of my family. But we'll fast forward to 25 years later. My husband and I got married here at this church. We're doing this interview at Trinity Episcopal Church in Covington. We got married here on the 25th anniversary of our first date. And my entire family was here. My parents were here. His parents, who are very anti when he came out, were both here. All of our families were here. Our nieces and nephews, all of our cousins, and just, the general, our friends. So it has changed a great deal. We say we have family, which you're born into, and I've been lucky that they have been very supportive, and they've always welcomed Robb, and then you kind of, as gay people, we a lot of times say we have a chosen family, because your family's not always there for you. And even when they're there, they don't understand everything sometimes as a gay person, like we need another gay person to talk to. So we kind of talk about our chosen family as well. And they were all here. And then we're both very active in this church. And so we had our church family here. So those are kind of our three worlds, and they were all here for our wedding. So it was rough at the beginning. I was still living at home when I met someone. So the very first guy I dated, I was still living at home. And the way I had to come out was my mom heard me on the telephone talking to him. Embarrassing, but she was watching Oprah, and she literally just at the commercial asked me if I was gay, and I said yes, and she went right back to watching Oprah. And so, but yeah, it took a long time. Also, the minister here at this church was very supportive of us, and so he helped my parents as well, I think, with that aspect.
For your dating life. Or
So,
history.
Okay, so actually for history, so the first boyfriend moved away quickly. He went back home to Pennsylvania because his parents were not well. So that ended. My second guy I dated turned out funny, from Northern Kentucky, and my mom and his mom were very, very good friends. So that actually was a really good thing because, again, my mom didn't know gay people. To her, it was that stereotypical, flaming, flamboyant person on television. So now she met this person that, oh, he grew up the same way you did. I know his family. I know how he grew up, and he's gay. So it kind of normalized it more. So that was actually a really good thing. But then after that, Robb, we met actually at Shooters. He's from here, but he lived in Columbus at the time. And he came to Cincinnati for the gay bowling tournament, which has been going on here in Cincinnati for, I don't know, 40 years or something. He was here for the gay bowling tournament. I went to Shooters that night because we say if I still worked at Delta, we never would have met. I quit Delta in August of 1997. I met him in September of 1997 because I could go out then. If I would have still worked at Delta, I couldn't have gone out on Friday night. I went out on Friday night and met him. We made a date to go to dinner the next night at Carol's. We went to dinner, and then the next weekend I drove to Columbus, and the next weekend he drove here. Next weekend we did that for about 9 months. And then his lease was up in Columbus, and it was kind of like, well, it's silly to renew a lease and silly for you to come down here and lease someplace. So he moved in, which, me being very conservative and everything, was pretty quick for me. But again, we've been together 25 years. All our nieces and nephews have known them their entire life, you know. So it was really special when we got married here. The date of the wedding was the 25th anniversary of that first date at Carol's. So, yeah. He works for Kroger, and they have, as you probably know, like the HRC index, you know, as far as LGBTQ friendly companies. Cincinnati has lots of good ones, Procter & Gamble and Kroger and General Electric, things like that. So Kroger, he's involved there with the gay group at Kroger, and he loves his job. So he's downtown at the corporate headquarters. No. So you've talked to Ron. Ron, he bowls. I bet a bunch of people, if you gave me the list, I'd be like, oh, roll. So it's called, it's the worst name ever. It's called Sin Tit, which I don't know, Cincinnati Invitational Tournament, something. Used to be held like every October, I believe. And then for a while they alternated between Cincinnati and Dayton when they kind of went down. But Robb's a big bowler. He was on the tournament in Columbus, on the committee. They have a huge bowling tournament. It's a big, there's a big gay league across the United States where they do. And actually, speaking of that, Robb and I have participated in the last 4 gay games. So he bowls every time and I run. I know I don't look like a runner, but I run the marathon for that. And we've done them in Chicago and Cleveland and Cologne, Germany, and Paris, France. And we're going in the fall to Guadalajara to do it there. So, yeah. So gay bowling, that's kind of what brought him here. And he still bowls. The league is on Thursday night. So he still bowls every Thursday for over 25 years now. And before that, when he lived here originally, he bowled with them. So it's been going on for a long time. So since he came back, which was 25 years, he's been out that entire time. But he moved to Columbus for a couple years, and before he left, he was part of it then. So I'm not sure of the date, but I would say 30, 40 years. Yeah, it's been going on.
Cool.
So actually, so just talking about that, because you're like, how old is that? Front Runners is a gay running group. And that's kind of the first organization, like I became like I guess if you say officially part of something in our community. Front Runners used to meet Tuesdays at Mount Storm, and then Thursday in Eden Park, and then Saturday in Spring Grove Cemetery. they still, 30, 35 years later. So again, I don't know how long this has been going on, but 35 years probably, at least. They meet on Saturday still in Spring Grove Cemetery. But that was the first, again, I'm not really a drinker, so you go to the bars. But this was my first kind of group where I did stuff with people outside of that bar scene. So front runners, we'd run together, but then we'd go have breakfast together, or they have a Christmas party, or they'd have a summer picnic or something like that. And so I did that stuff with them, but then you also made friends there. So then that's kind of how you started doing stuff. But that was probably the first kind of organized kind of gay organization, I guess, I got involved in. Yeah, I mean, there's lots of stuff. There's a gay softball league that is just getting ready to start up again at River City. They play, and now I just lost my train of thought. So River City, they've played at Schmidt Field along the river. They also play out on the west side sometimes, but they go around, and there's, again, national championships and big tournaments for gay softball. There's actually just a big gay volleyball tournament in town last weekend, and they have stuff that goes around the country. When Carol's was open, she actually, and I don't know exactly if I get it right, but I think she sponsored a gay soccer team in Cincinnati that went to the gay games, which I believe was probably in Vancouver at that time. And they won. They won like the gold medal or whatever. And they had the soccer ball there in the restaurant for years on top of the bar and stuff. So there's lots of organizations. I mean, as far as sports, like I said, volleyball and bowling and running and stuff. And then there's all kinds of other, well, even more so now, I think. It's exploded even more. But back in the day, there's different groups you could get involved with writing and poetry and again, the activism stuff, not necessarily groups, but I think most of those kind of grew out of other things or grew out of issues. There was a community center here for years in Cincinnati, and through different forms and starts and stops and things like that. And they had a lot of, they had a movie night and a book club and things like that. So it was good because, again, not to put us all in one pot, even though we're all gay, lesbian, transgender, whatever, we do have different things that we like and enjoy and stuff. So it's trying to find your niche, I guess, and where you fit in. Actually, I have an interesting story here about a religious group. So at kind of one of the big first activism, as far as, yes, I wrote letters, yes, I made calls, stuff like that. But in early 2000s, Covington was fighting for a fairness ordinance here. And in the end, it became the first fairness ordinance in northern Kentucky. I think Louisville and Lexington were before us. But it was a huge deal here in northern Kentucky, big kind of backers speaking out against the fairness, lots of priests and preachers and stuff, with their congregations rallying everybody up, against it. Our church here actually packed on several occasions city council meetings, in favor of it. Every council meeting, there would be priests standing there talking against it and, anti-LGBTQ and, all that stuff. And our minister here spoke. He was, in favor of the ordinance, which put a huge kind of bullseye, if you will, on our church. And if you know about Westboro Baptist Church, they actually came here to our church and protested. They marched out front, picketed, and this is kind of a middle upper class kind of church. And so even though we had a lot of people that supported us, until they saw that hatred out there, they never really understood what we went through or what we could feel. And I think that was a huge eye-opener for a lot of people, like, oh, yes, I sympathize. Oh, I'm for gay rights. But, and not that we dealt with that like on a daily basis or anything, but they saw the kind of hatred that's out there. And that changed so many people here. So talking again about the Westboro Baptist Church, that was, I mean, we look at that as a badge of honor now. I mean, my gosh, our church was picketed by Westboro Baptist Church. So to us, that's a good thing. It means we're doing something right, you know. We're still very active. I mentioned to you earlier, tomorrow we have a bus from our church going down to protest in Frankfurt against the anti-trans bills that are in legislation right now. So the church isn't talk. It's not, you know, things like that. It's people that really believe. I've gone here my entire life. That's what makes it even more special, I think. I came here when I was a year old. So it's really special to worship in a place where I'm sitting in the pew with my mom and dad and my husband. You know, there's not a lot of places that happens. You know, my friends that I grew up and I went to high school with are still here with now their kids. People that were mentors to me, people I looked up to, teachers are now my friends here, you know. So it's just neat too that it's not like a church I came into or I chose, like, you know, oh, this gay church or something. I mean, the church is, you know, middle class or whatever. This is where I've gone my whole life. And it's, yeah, so. So I would say it was very the church was very social justice activated. Years ago, there's a plaque out front about a women's suffrage movement here that had a convention here in 1900 something, I don't know. The Northern Kentucky Community Center, which, you know, does all kinds of things in the community. It was started here. We were one of the founding churches. Senior Services of Northern Kentucky started here in our basement. So they've always been active in that. And so people are always very social aware and very active in the community because it is a downtown Covington church, yet most of its members come from Florence and Fort Mitchell and across the river and Fort Thomas and things like that. But I would say in the 90s, we had got a priest, Joe Pennington. He and his wife came here from up east, and they were very much kind of the catalyst, I think, for it. Just not, again, that they were these huge, he's the one that spoke at the city council, but also just the little things he did where, like, he wasn't like, oh, we're doing this gay thing, but like if they had a family thing, one of the families he would choose would be a gay family to participate, or in the prayers of the people, like he would just, like, we would pray for Matthew Shepard on the anniversary of his, and, you know, a lot of people that pray just went over their head, but to those of us, it really meant something. So it was just those little touches. But then, yeah, he was the one that spearheaded and fought for the Fairness Alliance. And so actually he's been retired for several years, but when we got married, he came back and married us. So yeah, it is really cool. We've won for the best float last several years in the Northern Kentucky Pride. We've been a sponsor of Northern Kentucky Pride. We've had Pride meetings here at our church. We've had the interfaith service here at our church. So it is, I mean, the parade goes right by our church, and one of the neatest things is it's not just like the gay people on the float or whatever. Last year, I think we had 60-something people on our float, and like 30, 40 of them were children, you know. It's a very open, accepting church, and it's very, I love it because it's not, and I don't want to offend anyone, it's not like a gay church. It's a church where you have everyone, and you have older people, and you have families, and you have singles, and you have gay people, and it's just like life. That's why it's so good. It's just like what you see when you go out of here, in here, and so it's a very loving place, and so these kids are raised that way, and it's just yeah, I can't explain it. It's funny. Our friends kind of joke when we go out. We went with people that Robb works with, and we started talking in like 5 minutes. We said something about our church, and the one guy said, "Oh, I won," and we're like, "What?" And he said, "Before you all got here, we took bets about how many minutes it would be until you mentioned your church, because that's how important it is." And we've participated in Pride, the Cincinnati Pride Parade. We had a car. We marched several years. Now that Northern Kentucky has a Pride, we focus most of our efforts here just because this is kind of our home. So if we can make an impact we're trying to do it here in our community. But we have had booths and been in the parade in Cincinnati. Yeah. It's fairly recent, in the last 10 years. So, yeah, I should know. Bonnie and Katie will be mad at me for not knowing. But I don't know. But yeah, it's grown. And I think the last 3 years we've had a float. We've done other things. The parade passes right in front of our church. So we usually have water, and everybody at church after church goes out. One year the bishop was here, and our bishop actually rode in the parade with us. So, Trinity is very involved with lots. We're involved with the Northern Kentucky Children's Home. And so just a lot of stuff. Peter Danjo, who's our rector now, is very involved in different community groups and getting groups to use our church. A lot of people are like, oh, they're just trying to get you in there to go to, service to make you believe what they believe, whatever. But we really want the church to be part of the community, that we're a part of. Yeah. No, it's funny. I like to use the word queer. I know there's some people that are very offended by it. They think now it has a negative connotation. I don't, but I know too, as a kid, if you said, oh, he's queer, it was definitely a connotation. Yeah, definitely a negative. But yeah, I understand. I really don't think so, just because we're right here on the cusp. Like I said, I give tours of Cincinnati, and people are like, I live in Newport, and they're like, oh, you're giving tours? You don't even live here. And I'm like, I live 8 blocks from the river. I live closer to downtown than 90% of the people that live in the city of Cincinnati. So I do feel we're very much a Cincinnati. We get the TV from Cincinnati, the newspaper. The thing where I think the big disconnect is our politics and everything are in Frankfort. And we're kind of this stepchild of Kentucky. Everything kind of revolves around Lexington, Louisville kind of thing. And so obviously in Kentucky, although in Cincinnati it's the same way, kind of Democratic, surrounded by Republican, red, and then kind of Northern Kentucky, which is changing quite a bit. But Lexington, Louisville kind of blue, but then the state red. So I think we do identify here, and that's why it's kind of strange, because, people say, oh, we're going to go across to Covington to see Kentucky. And I'm like, well, it is Kentucky, but, you need to go to, horse country or something to see Kentucky. So I think the biggest thing is politically, stuff that's affecting us here and things. And even during COVID, it was hard because, there was this happening, and this governor was saying this, and this was this. So we live over here, but both of us work over there, and we're going over there, and our friends and where we go out is there. So yeah, it's a little different that way. So obviously we're an old married couple now, so we don't go out to the bars too much. We usually go to Birdcage on our anniversary because that's where we met. So actually for our bachelor party, which was kind of a dinner, it was funny. It was another gay couple, and then who was Robb's best man and his partner, and then my brother was my best man, so him and his wife, and then the other 3 couples were straight couples. They were the ones, that's who we hang out with. So we went to Lalo for dinner, and then we went to Birdcage, and then we went to Bloom and OTR. So, but yeah, I don't really. Don't think we really go. We live in Newport near the Crazy Fox, so kind of a neighborhood hangout place there. But we love to eat. We go out to eat tons, and like I said, our friends, we go out every Thursday night, and go out usually after church on Sunday. But yeah, as far as bars, we really don't. If there's some special event or something, we're kind of more in events, like, again, we go to kind of film festivals all over. We were just planning to go to North Carolina, and we just found something else was that weekend. But we're planning to go to Chicago's gay film festival this year, and we went to Cleveland last year, and we've been to Pittsburgh's film festival and Philadelphia's gay film festival. So again, I really like that. Kind of like you, I guess I like sharing stories. It's the stories. I love hearing other people's stories. And the other thing too is how, like, everybody's story is different. yet everyone's story is the same in a way. There's something, but you have your own take or whatever, but it's also interesting when you kind of take everything away, kind of the same story. So my tours are actually food. So my tours are actually food tours. So I work for a company. So the main one I do is called the Best Bites and Sights. So it's a 3-hour tour. We try the 5 foods Cincinnati's known for. So we have Geta, we have Skyline and Graders and everything. And then we see the top 10 sites in Cincinnati. So we see Fountain Square and Music Hall and Finley Market and Suspension Bridge, stuff like that. So we have other ones. The thing that kind of started it was I was an exchange student the year after high school, and we had people coming back from England. And so, you're going to England, and England's like this big. And so they're like, what do you want to see? And you can go wherever you want. Well, then when they came to America, I'm like, you can go wherever you want, but only Ohio, Kentucky, and Indiana. So you kind of had to find like the first or the oldest or the only or something, like the things that made it unique. And so actually, I don't know how this relates to my whole gay thing, but 30 years ago or so, I created a game called Queen City Trivia that sold at stores in Cincinnati. And it was a trivia game based on Trivia Pursuit. But I started that because I worked at Delta. Every morning before I went to Delta, I'd go to the downtown public library and, research and came up with this. But basically because I was trying to find stuff to impress these other students coming from England. So the game grew out of that. And like I said earlier, I'm a big cheerleader of Cincinnati. I think it does offer so much that a lot of people, when they live here, they do realize that, but there's so many people, again, talking about the difference in Northern Kentucky and Cincinnati. I used to work in Florence, and in my office, I don't know how many people, 30 maybe, I would say probably just under half would never go across that river. Like if you say, I went to, and they're like, where's that? And you tell them, I don't go downtown. I've never been downtown. I don't go downtown. Which is just totally crazy. And then I get so mad at people that like, they tell people, there's nothing to do here. Or you're like, where should we go eat? And they're like, there's Fridays, or something. And I'm just like, ready to scream. So because there is a lot here. The interesting thing I think on the tour I've learned is Cincinnati really doesn't have an identity outside of this area, where if you say Detroit, you think of something. If you say Chicago, you think of something. If you say Nashville. But if you say Cincinnati and you're not from this immediate area, you literally get a blank stare. And then they'll go, well, it's a city. And then they'll go, the Cincinnati Reds. And like that's all they'll say. So it's interesting on the tour. And that's kind of one reason I love it is you get these people and it's the first time they've been here. And, they are very impressed after they've been here. And so I think I know that, we have the arts, we do have, lots of stuff. So that's kind of a thing that's, I don't know, I just find very interesting. Like,
Is your game still in print?
It's not. And now my game's not in print because everything has changed so much. Like I would totally have to redo it. Like they've torn down this and now this record's been broken and, this is no longer this. So I probably could do it, but I'd have to like totally redo the book. But like the I Love Cincinnati shops, if you remember, this one's still in the Crew Tower, but there used to be one, Tri-County Mall and here and there. They sold them. The public library, the Friends Shop used to sell it. It was sold at the library. Behringer Crawford Museum, Main Strasse would sell it. So it was just, again, something, we talked a little about how I'm a pack rat and I kind of just love stuff and love exploring and stuff like that. So it's kind of grew out of that too, I guess. Yeah, which is true. And that's sad too, because I don't know if you've been to Cleveland. Cleveland is amazing. And it's actually more, I don't know how, like ethnically diverse. Like I feel like there's a lot more like ethnic foods and kind of ethnic neighborhoods. And again, we talked about homogenization of stuff. I kind of love that, like in Cincinnati, how, we're kind of getting off the subject, but like how the Jewish population was kind of down in the West End, and then eventually because of, it moved up to Avondale, and then because of stuff there, it moved farther out to like Amberley Village, and kind of seeing like the progression and why people move to areas and stuff like that. And Cleveland we were just there last year, and they have it's a vibrant city too.
So what year was your first Cincinnati Pride? Do you remember when?
So that's awful because you think, oh my gosh, I should remember that because it was a big thing. But I would say in the mid 90s, there were several years that it didn't happen. Well, some years it happened, but it was just like, if I recall, like a proclamation or a speech at City Hall or something like that. It wasn't like the big festival. And I know one year there was like a festival down at the dock, and I did kind of go there, but it was before I was like really out. So I didn't really, like, I kind of did it and I was like, okay, I'm done. Like, I don't know. I just didn't get into it. And then we didn't have really a big parade for a while. And so that's the years I went to Toronto and Montreal. And so I think probably around the end of the 90s, beginning of 2000s, it started, and the parade went from Clifton to Northside. So probably from there till now, probably pretty much always. So, if you say 50 years, I've probably been to over half. If you figure several years, there wasn't one. So in the early years, again, I talked earlier about kind of there was Court Street, kind of a gayborhood, if you will, and then Clifton and Northside. And Northside kind of always kind of considered the lesbian neighborhood. Crazy Lady Bookstore was an institution that was amazing. And those are the kind of places I miss. Like, if that's the identity we're missing, like if we had a place like that. But the parade went from Clifton, so again, a very kind of concentrated area, to Northside. And again, now, we go through the main downtown Cincinnati, and there's huge crowds, and they're everywhere. Here, you kind of started in that business district by the Esquire, and there was crowds. And you got down to the business district in Northside, and there were crowds. But you kind of went down Clifton, and I mean, it wasn't packed with people. It was, more of like a neighborhood parade. Kind of, it was smaller. It was, today it's corporate and banks and everything. There it was your organizations and your different groups just kind of marching. Some things I guess had little floats kind of thing, but nothing elaborate like we have now. It was people riding in cars and stuff like that. And then you got to Northside, and it was like, ooh, there's all these people. And then the festival was right there in Hoffner Park. So not huge, obviously, like Bicentennial Commons, but a good park where organizations all set up, booths again, things like that. And I think back then, again, it was more kind of information things, like now, like it's all about swag and giveaways and stuff like that. And back then, I feel like, you had your PFLAG booth, which we still have, and your AVOC, AIDS Volunteers of Cincinnati booth, and Front Runners booth. And it was all kinds of the places, again, for you to find where you fit in. And I felt like it was more, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, so I'm going to skip the word and just say, basically, it was this big oval, and it wasn't that big, but literally, it was, you just loved being part of it. And so you walked the circle like 30 times, just stopping at booths, and you'd see people and talk to people. And then once it was over, and I don't know if it was always a Sunday. To me, it feels like it was a Sunday. Maybe the last few were Sundays. But, the bars were there. There was Colors and Jacobs and Bronze and different ones. And they were right there by there. So once that festival was over, you just kind of went to those bars and you hung out, and, it was just a party for that day. And it was kind of where you saw everybody, and, people you hadn't seen, and again, trying to find your niche. I feel like that the community was smaller in that was the community smaller, or is it just all these other people coming now? Now all my straight friends come to it, all these other people that, we have some event or we have something, and you're like, where are these people the rest of the year? Like we see them at that. And so I just felt like it was smaller. It was more, again, like your neighborhood thing where you saw people you hadn't seen, or, met new people through these organizations that were catering the booth there. Yeah. So I really wasn't that involved, I guess, probably till then, before then, with Pride. I would think my first Pride, that'd be memorable, as a gay person. It's like, oh, your first Pride. I think that would be like, you'd remember that date. To me, one of the big ones I remember now is once marriage equality, that passed right before, I don't know if it was the day before or something, before Pride, 7-8 years ago. And just how that year the celebration was totally different. It was this celebration. It was this party in the streets. It was like people you didn't know. You were hugging people. You were just, you're like, we've made it. And, and then again, I talked a little earlier, we're going backwards in many ways. But that was kind of that big celebration where the earlier parades, they were celebrations because for sure, not that I was some trailblazer because I was later, but still you were out and everything. But it was more, again, of a march. You just kind of walked down the hill, you were proud and everything, but it wasn't this huge kind of hoopla that it is now. So pretty much attend at least every year. Like I said, our church has been involved. We've had floats. We've had things like that. OutReels has had different entries. I've worked with different groups. I don't know if Front Runners has, but different things like that. But I've never been on the planning committee for Pride or anything like that. And they do a ton more. Like I said, Pride, you're like, where are these people the rest of the year? But Pride now, is not just June. Their committee plans events all year long. So OutReels is 12 years old this year, 2023. It was Chuck Beatty's idea. He wanted to have a film festival, a gay queer film festival here in Cincinnati. I don't even know how he put it out there, because 12 years ago I wasn't on social media. But he had a meeting at Japs and just said, I'm going to be at this bar. If anyone's interested, come down, talk to me or whatever. I showed up. I didn't know him. And we've been working on it. We had people come off and on the committee throughout the years for numerous reasons. We've had, different members, big committees, small committees. I've been on it every year since then. So Chuck and I are the two constants. We've both been involved since the beginning of it. So when it started, we were at the No Theater downtown. We moved to the Aronoff. We moved to Price Hill, to the Warsaw Federal Incline Theater. We moved to the World Cinema down at Garfield, and then we moved back to the back to the Warsaw Federal Incline Theater. So we've been all around. But again, a lot of festivals are bigger, obviously, than Cincinnati's, but people love it when they come here. Again, kind of that thing, I didn't know about Cincinnati. So Film Freeway is kind of where people submit films and people read about films to find out about the different festivals. And if you read on there, we have reviews from filmmakers. I don't think we have anything but 5 stars. And just the thing people, and talking about, because it is smaller, how they got this this personal touch where a lot of films, you come in and you're in this megaplex or whatever and they watch the film. And we usually try to have parties. We have a filmmakers brunch, for the different filmmakers. If they're interested in a tour, we usually take them around Cincinnati. Most of them have never been here. We've had filmmakers from California and New York and everywhere, but a lot of them haven't been to Cincinnati before. The very first year we had Meredith Baxter, and she narrated a film. She was the narrator for a documentary we had. And she was amazing. That was kind of amazing to have her for our first year. Dale Shores was another big draw one year when he was here. But again, as part of the film festival, we always try to have some kind of display in the lobby about our community. We had a lesbian one a few years ago. We had a film about a documentary about a group of lesbians that met in the 70s, kind of in each other's homes because you couldn't really meet in public. And we made a kind of display about that in conjunction with the Ohio Lesbian Archives. So we had another film kind of about a gay bar that closed in a very rural area of the South, and it had been kind of the community center for the area. And so we did a whole poster display about bars in Cincinnati and ones that have closed, and we did photographs, and people posted stuff on social media, and we got all kinds of reminiscence about bars and things, and that's what I find interesting. But it's hearing those stories, and again, everyone has their own stories, but kind of these common themes throughout. So there was actually a film festival briefly, maybe 2 or 3 years, called OutReels before that, which we didn't really know. Like, we didn't pick the name because of that, but then I was like, and I believe, I don't know the years, but they had screenings at the Art Museum, and they did that for a couple years. And so it's just kind of neat after the fact that, like, we found that out, and so we were like, there are some people in the community still that had been involved, so we actually wrote to them and said, are you okay with us using this name? And yes, I mean, it's a homage kind of to them, if not even realizing that we were doing it. So when we first started, there was a magazine, a gay magazine called CNKY, Scene. So the first year was called CNKY Scene Film Festival, which was quite a mouthful. So it changed to CNKY Film Festival, and then the magazine actually folded, and then that's when it became OutReels after that. So yeah, that's the same film festival. Yeah, that's been going on. There were, and that's a kind of funny thing, like you say, like, you didn't go to bar, or that I don't drink, but when you go into the gay bar, they always had like a shelf, and that's where all the gay literature was, in the magazines and the newspapers. And when I'd leave, I'd grab one of every one of them, because that's how you knew what was going on. And I shared with you clippings I had, from different things that I'd saved over the years. But that's how you read and kind of knew about your community or what was happening. It was before the internet and before cell phones and stuff, and everything was on flyers or on newspapers. And the Gay People's Chronicle was a big one. It was out of Cleveland, but it was actually a statewide paper. And there was like LGBTQ news, and there was the Q paper or something, Q News or something. I don't remember a lot, but there was magazines throughout the years, different ones. Nationally, there was a magazine, The Advocate, which was kind of like the Time magazine of the gay world. It had music and everything. And I was really upset when that went away. They're still Out magazine, but it's very different. It's fashion and kind of on the edge of stuff, not really the news and things that affect us. But yeah, so I always used to go in and kind of get all that stuff. And yeah, that's what's kind of missing. There's kind of not those publications and stuff. And so it'll be interesting too in the future, like what there is to show as far as paper or actually images and stuff. People don't print their pictures anymore and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I mean, my friend Mary, like, she's a big reader, like, and yeah, she hates ebooks, she hates Kindle, she still wants her book. And yeah, and I'm that way too. I mean, I have a lot of books, gay books. So growing up, there was a book called The Best Little Boy in the World, which is kind of a classic kind of in the gay world. And I super identified with that because, again, back then you read about the ones that were flaming or kind of the caricature or whatever. And this was kind of this book about this, middle-class boy in a regular neighborhood. And because he didn't want to be different, he tried to live up to everyone's expectations. So he tried to be the best little boy in the world. And so, not that it was a metaphor for me, but I very much identified with that book growing up. It's a young, I mean, it could be a young adult. There's another one, The Best Little Boy in the World. And then I think there's a follow-up called The Best Little Boy in the World Grows Up. And it's him a little older still. But it's just, kind of as a lot of us feel like we know we're gay from early on, but you don't want to disappoint parents or mentors or teachers or whatever. So you're trying to live up into this kind of expectation. And so it's a very good book, but one that still I remember. I was going to say the Pride Now, I do love it. There's so many, you'll talk to different camps again of people who are like, oh, it's not what it was, or it's, it lost its reason, its point. It started as a march, it started a protest. And I think actually in the next couple of years, you might see more of that come back, kind of the more issue-driven kind of things. But it has grown into this kind of big celebration. And again, it's going back to that whole thing. Is that better or worse? Like, it's getting a lot more publicity. It's got a lot more corporate sponsors. Hopefully they're not just giving money to be out there and they really, believe. And the numbers are huge. But then, like I said, you go to these other gay things or supporting gay, and you're like, where are these people? They're not at the parade, which, everybody's at. And so I think there are people, I think most people that do see it, at least my friends, like it is this celebration. That's the one time again, we're out, but still it's just that kind of one day you can kind of let your guard down more and you can kind of just, I don't know, I see more in your young people, and I just use the expression like, dance to their own drummer. You just see people feeling so much more free at an earlier age that, I don't know, we're kind of older and we'll sit and like we're at a bar and we'll see some young kid just out there in another world, and you're just like, wow, for them to be able to feel that at that age, it's kind of cool. So I guess in that way, yes, it is good, and we have come a long way. Going forward, I think, like I said, it might, the way the current climate is, become a lot more issues driven. You're going to see more protest and kind of rallies, maybe more so, which we had that too, again, before gay marriage and things like that. There's lots of rallies around here. And again, Cincinnati, although we're kind of surrounded by, Cincinnati is a pretty safe space in a lot of ways. Our current mayor, I'm a big fan of. I don't know if you should cut that out or not. I'm a big fan of him. He's very supportive of so many things. And the gay, I have a great picture, I guess last year in the parade, he had that pride flag, and a lot of politicians, but he backs it up. I've talked to him too on occasion. I've talked to issues with him. I've thanked him for kind of what he has stood up for too. Moving forward, it's always going to be corporate now. America is corporate now. It's going to be like that, and it's fun, and it's it makes it a big party. I mean, actually, we're able to have big entertainment now at Pride because of that. They had Todrick Hall a couple years ago, Nina West, Steve Grand, Alex Newell a couple years ago. So, I mean, that brings them in. So we've enjoyed all that. So I don't know. I guess we'll see if it'll get bigger or if some of this legislation in the next few years squashes it and kind of some of the drag ban stuff is very scary, what that could mean to those celebrations, but just the community at large and the trans community especially, part of our community. But yeah, so that could change the way celebrations are in the near future. Well, obviously voting, the sad thing is, and yeah, I don't know how this is going to sound. Right now, the way the current political climate, I mean, it's almost like it doesn't even matter what you do. It's happening, it's, but again, so many of the young people too have only known it when it's good. So they don't understand kind of some of the things we went through. And so like even where I said kind of people from our church are going tomorrow to protest. The majority of those are older people. Of course, younger people have to work too. So I do give them that. But, the younger people have seen the fruits of this, and they're enjoying it, and they can be free because of that, and they can be more themselves. But if something does happen and these laws become effective in different things, will they stand up? Which I'm sure, hopefully, we don't know that we would have back then, in different generations for different things. Basically, you have to do what you have to do. But, and I think, it's scary. I mean, I think, I don't know, kids today, if something did happen like that, major, that, how they would deal with it. I think, in a lot of ways, there's a lot more kind of kid gloves on stuff. So people maybe haven't had some of those real life experiences where if something does happen, it'll be much more of a shock. So obviously vote, make your voice heard. The biggest thing too is, like I said, I write letters, I march, I protest, stuff like that. But, and a lot of times you feel like you're not doing anything, like down in Frankfort, we're going there to protest, but we know the Republican majority is going to overturn it anyway. But we're there showing, but it's going to happen anyway. So I think that's what kids might be like, why do it? Why should I do it? Why does it matter? So, but yeah, our voices do matter. So my quote that I use, and I've used like probably since high school is, and I don't know where this even came from, we are not on this earth to see through one another, but to see one another through. So, I have no idea. So yeah. So as you commented on Facebook the other day, I wish people would identify the sources. All right,
Man.
because you can't. Well, can you use it?
Historical groups too.
Could you use it for like public domain? That picture, is that what I'm assuming you mean? Like you wanted to know where that was from, so you could maybe use it for something, or
where it's from.
Okay.
People post all these pictures,
Yeah.
and they have no context, and I'm like, where did you get this image?
Yeah, because so mine, I don't know, those pictures, you don't have to have people's permission, that's in those pictures,
Sure.
right?
No.
Well, no, okay. So that's what I'm like, I don't know if I'm very excited that you're doing this. Again, I think it's important to capture this because, again, even when I reach out to you, I'm like, I don't know what I have to offer that you haven't heard from somebody else, or you have the older people that obviously their history goes back much farther, and I'm like, so things that I know, other people know, so I'm probably not giving you anything you haven't heard already, but I love these things that save our history, and that people, again, we talked about history sites on Facebook or something, years from now, people will look back and stuff, and, what if those people hadn't saved those images or saved those documents or whatever. So I'm really big on documenting our community and kind of, the vanishing of the community, I think in several ways, the neighborhoods or whatever, that there used to be and stuff like that, again, it's neat that you don't have them, that you can live anywhere, but those were definitely unique places. I was gonna, and I still might, but I was actually gonna talk to some guy that, we had a couple at church that they were in their 90s and they both just passed away. And they were a gay couple that had been together, 60 years or so. And there was actually two of them. Another couple, they were in their 80s and they just passed away both too. But I'm sure their family came in and just pitched everything, And, the one guy who was in his 90s, we used to go to lunch with him. And, he would tell stories, from the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and you were just in awe. He told one time about they went to a party up near Miami University, and it was before the interstate. So they drove this country road all the way up somewhere in Ohio, and he said it took hours. And they got there, and it was just this big party in a field. And when they got there, there was two cops there. And he said, so they didn't even slow down. They just zoomed by and drove around. And after they got home, they found out from friends that it was a costume party, and these guys were dressed as policemen. They weren't even police. And, just stories like that, they were so scared they turned around and, left. And it was neat stories like that. Yeah. I wish those four were still alive. Yeah, two of them, it would have been just like Carl and them. You would have been like, wow, They were amazing stories. But yeah, the two, yeah, and they just passed away.
Do you remember their names? Or what
yeah.
are their full names? Maybe I could look them up.
So Frank Dempsey, and his partner was Hank, and I can't tell you his last name. It was a weird name, Mess. But Frank Dempsey would have been Park Hills when he died, maybe a year and a half ago or so. Yeah. So, and then the others were Don Will and Don Neff, and they went to church here forever, and everybody called them the Dons. And they were everybody. I mean, many people came to our church because of the Dons. And there was one. We have a person that formerly was Roman Catholic, and actually a Roman Catholic priest, and came here and said that he stayed because he couldn't believe there was a church where these two old gay men that were a couple, and everybody celebrated. Like our church had an anniversary party for him for like on their 35th wedding anniversary, or anniversary of being together. But and that's why he stayed, because our church celebrated this two men as a couple. So
yeah, this church
yeah,
is really special.
Yeah, I wish I could find. There's another woman I know who she's going to be 90, but she didn't live here when she was younger. Like she'd be great like as far, but not local. Yeah, those four would have talked. They would have loved to, because again, the one loved to talk to us just because he wanted to share his stories. Like for so long, I feel like he didn't have anyone to talk to. Like, and then when he had these younger guys, like he finally had a group that he belonged, even though he was 30 years older than us. He finally had his people. You hear that probably. You probably hear that before, like my tribe or whatever. You finally kind of find, again, there's this whole big world that's LGBTQIA plus whatever, but you have to find your niche in that, and even that can be hard. That can be scary for people too, especially, I don't know. I think of certain people that, just really shy and stuff, and like they're such amazing people, but they don't reach out, and so they're just kind of in this limbo that they don't kind of fit in with them, and they don't fit in with them. Yeah, now I'm starting to ramble, so.